My team killed it this week. I put up 164 points against my opponent. I got third highest in my league. And it just so happens I played the guy who got the most points this week. Almost 200 points. Unbelievable. I thought I had it. I never had it. I'm 2-6, still last in my league. But I'm not giving up hope just yet. My opponent had Jalen Hurts, CeeDee Lamb, Devon Achane, and Kyle Pitts. 2 almost put up 40 and 2 almost put up 30. So just an unfortunate week for me, and it's just not looking good. Even though I lost, I still do like my team, but I am looking to make at least one more trade. I'm looking to see if I can get a top wide receiver, maybe like Garrett Wilson or Amon-Ra St. Brown, but we'll see if I can make it happen. Starting off with the Thursday night game, Vikings and Rams. The Rams are back. They got Kupp back. They got Nacua back. They're still waiting on a couple of their offensive linemen to get healthy. Their defense looked really good. I don't even know why they even considered trading Cooper Kupp. I understand that they had one win about a week ago, but when Kupp is healthy, he's one of the best receivers still in this league. With that being said, everybody on the Rams had a great game. Matthew Stafford went 279 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. My guy, Kyren Williams, 23 carries for 97 yards and 5 catches for 19 yards and a touchdown. Also, Puka Nacua had 7 catches for 106 yards, and Cooper Kupp went 5 for 51 and a touchdown. And if you decided not to start Nacua and went with Demarcus Robinson, he had 2 catches for 35 yards and 2 touchdowns. So everybody had a great game, and they're all must starts now that the receivers are back healthy. As far as the Vikings go, Sam Darnold had a pretty good game, 240 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Justin Jefferson had 8 catches for 115 yards, but after him, they had 4 receivers that only had 2 catches between 20 and 37 yards. So not a very good day outside of Justin Jefferson. And Aaron Jones only had 58 yards on 19 carries. He also had 2 catches for 37 yards, but I definitely thought that they should have got the run game more involved. He looked pretty good in the first quarter, and then he just gradually fell off as the game went on. Moving on to the Sunday games, it was actually a very exciting Sunday morning. 6 out of the 8 games came down to the last possession, and it was just fun to watch. Starting off with the Ravens and Browns, who would have thought? I had Baltimore blowing them out, but Jameis Winston has always been a pretty decent quarterback in this league for a few years now, and he showed up to play on Sunday. He had 334 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. And my guy Nick Chubb only had 16 carries for 52 yards. He wasn't involved in the passing game this week, but with this win, I hope that they gradually get him more involved because he's a very good screen runner, and I just want him to have the ability to get, 3 to 5 targets a game. Also, I did have another one of my last minute switches, actually last second switches. There was about 20 or 30 seconds left before the game started, and I decided to swap out Romeo Doubs for Cedric Tillman, and it worked out great for me in the end. Cedric Tillman had 7 catches for 99 yards and 2 touchdowns, including the game-winning touchdown, which was freaking awesome to see. And Romeo Doubs still did all right. I think he had somewhere about 10, 11 points in my league. But with Jameis Winston at quarterback, a lot of these receivers did pretty well. Elijah Moore went 8 for 85, Jerry Jeudy 5 for 79, and David Njoku 5 catches for 61 yards and a touchdown. So maybe they're all must starts now with Jameis Winston starting, or maybe he'll start to favor one more than the other, but keep an eye on them. I'm just glad I got Cedric Tillman on my team. As far as the Ravens go, Lamar Jackson still had a pretty good game. 289 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and he ran the ball 8 times for 46 yards. But he did take a step down from what we're normally used to seeing, but this is still a good day for a quarterback. Also, Derrick Henry took a step back this week. He had 11 carries for 73 yards. But he did have a touchdown late in the game to kind of salvage his week. Mark Andrews is definitely stepping up every week. He's a must start. He had 5 catches for 36 yards and a touchdown. And Nelson Aguilar had the other touchdown. He went 3 for 36. But Zay Flowers had a great game, 7 catches for 115 yards, so we know that these guys are must starts every week. Moving on to the Colts and Texans. Unfortunate news for Texans fans, Stephon Diggs did go down with a non-contact knee injury. So they're going to say something about it today as far as if he's out for the season, if it was an ACL, or how much time he's going to miss. But he ended the game with 5 catches for 81 yards, no touchdowns. But Tank Dell's going to be the one to benefit most from this, because even if he's out for a month or 2 months, Nico Collins will be back to help kind of take some of the pressure off of him. And I just think he's going to do well moving forward. Speaking of Tank Dell, he had 4 catches for 35 yards and a touchdown. And Joe Mixon killed it again. 25 carries for 102 yards, 1 touchdown, and he had 4 catches for 32 yards. And I think the one who might benefit more in this offense if Diggs does go down and miss time is Dalton Schultz. He had 4 catches for 52 yards, but he's definitely a must-start tight end every week. I just think he's kind of gradually been slow this year, but he's definitely good enough to have big games. Moving on to the Colts, Anthony Richardson is just not a good quarterback right now. I've been saying this for a couple of weeks. They need to bench him and put Joe Flacco starting every week moving forward and just have him sit back and learn. He went 10 for 32, 175 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and he got sacked 5 times. He was able to run the ball 6 times for 45 yards, but without that 1 touchdown that was a blown coverage, he would have barely had about 100 yards passing. So that's just not good enough when you have the weapons that they do on this team. But Jonathan Taylor did well. He had 20 carries for 105 yards and 1 touchdown. And Josh Downs was the one who did catch the blown coverage. It was 4 catches for 109 yards and a touchdown. But everybody else outside of that, 1 catch. Pittman, 1 for 16. Sermon, 1 for 14. Taylor, 1 for 12. Pierce, 1 for 11. It's just not a good look with Anthony Richardson running this offense. Moving on to another good game, Packers and Jaguars. Unfortunately for Packer fans, Jordan Love did go down with a groin injury. He ended his day 14 for 22, 196 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So, tough day if you started him. Josh Jacobs, another great game. 25 carries for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns. Even if Jordan Love is out, you still have to start Josh Jacobs. As far as the receivers go, they didn't have a very good game. The only one worth mentioning is Tucker Kraft, 3 for 78 and a touchdown. But if Malik Willis is starting next week, I think I would stay away from this whole group of receivers except for Tucker Kraft. And as far as the Jaguars go, tough news for that whole receiving group. Brian Thomas Jr. is going to be out for 2 to 4 weeks with a chest rib injury. Christian Kirk is out for the season with a broken collarbone. And Gabe Davis left, I think it was in the 2nd or 3rd quarter, with a shoulder injury. So honestly, I don't even know who's left. Parker Washington is their 4th wide receiver, so they're definitely going to have to call up some players from the practice squad or sign some free agents this week. But I just hope that Evan Ingram benefits the most from these injuries, because he's my starting tight end. And I believe that ETN will be back next week. So with him and Bigsby, I think they're going to rely on the running game. Moving on to the blowout game of the week, Lions and Titans. It was actually a pretty good game, 14-14 in the first half. But then the Lions just rolled them up and smoked them in the second half. Jared Goff had a weird game. He only had 85 yards passing, but he had 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. So I don't think I've ever seen that happen. And David Montgomery even threw a touchdown pass to Sam Laporta, which was cool to see. It seemed like everyone on this team got a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs killed it, 11 carries for 127 yards and a touchdown. David Montgomery, 9 carries for 33 yards and a touchdown. And as far as the receivers go, Sam Laporta did well this week. 6 catches for 48 yards and a touchdown. Khalif Raymond, 2 catches for 14 yards and a touchdown. And he also had a punt return for a touchdown. Amon St. Brown did have a touchdown, but he only had 2 catches for 7 yards this week. So he's still a must start, as well as the other 2 running backs and Sam Laporta as well. Moving on to the Falcons and Bucks. This game was for first place in the division, and the Falcons ended up pulling it out. Kirk Cousins had a great game, 276 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. And Bijan Robinson also had a good day, 13 carries for 63 yards, and he had 6 catches for 37 yards and 1 touchdown. And as far as the receivers go, Darnell Mooney had a great game, 5 catches for 92 yards and a touchdown. And Kyle Pitts, 4 catches for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns. Drake London took a step back this week. He had 4 catches for 34 yards, but like I've been saying for the past few weeks, this offense has been coming along just fine, and all these guys are must starts. As far as the Bucks go, Baker Mayfield had a good game, 330 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, but he did have 2 interceptions. And Bucky Irvin had a great game too, 9 carries for 44 yards and 7 catches for 40 yards. So I think he's a must start every week, even if you have to plug him into your RB spot or even your flex. Next up, Jets and Patriots. The Patriots ended up pulling this one out in the end. Aaron Rodgers had an alright game, 233 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And Garrett Wilson had a good game, 5 catches for 113 yards. Devontae Adams isn't doing too well like we thought he would. He only had 4 catches for 54 yards. But Tyler Conklin had 3 catches for 42 yards and a touchdown. I have him on my bench. I had him starting every week before Evan Ingram came back from injury. But I'm going to keep him there and maybe look to trade him for maybe another wide receiver. I'm still hurting at that 3rd spot, so we'll see. Breece Hall didn't do very good this week. He had 16 carries for 80 yards, and he only had 1 catch for 9 yards. So what I've noticed is that Braylon Allen is a really good backup running back. He could probably start on some teams, but he's taking away a lot of carries from Breece Hall. He had 12 carries for 32 yards and a touchdown. Obviously, you're not going to bench Breece Hall, but it's just kind of hard to look at every week knowing that Allen's taking away about half of his touches. And as far as the Patriots go, I'm not even sure how they pulled out this win, but Jacoby Brissett came in nicely because Drake May had a concussion, and Ramondre Stevenson had a good game. He had 20 carries for 48 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 3 catches for 17 yards. So I would put him in my flex position moving forward if you didn't already, because he has the ability to have these types of games. Moving on to the Cardinals and Dolphins. The Cardinals ended up pulling this one out on the last play of the game. Kyler Murray had a good day, 307 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and he also ran the ball 5 times for 19 yards. Trey McBride had a great game. He had 9 catches for 124 yards, and Marvin Harrison Jr. 6 catches for 111 yards and a touchdown. As well as James Conner, he had 2 catches for 16 yards, and he ran the ball 20 times for 53 yards and a touchdown. So they spoiled Tua's return, and these guys are must starts every week. And as far as the Dolphins go, Tua had an alright game. He had 234 yards passing, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and he ran the ball 3 times for 13 yards. So everybody's going to kind of hold their breath whenever he runs, but I'm just glad he was able to come out of that game healthy. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle only stepped it up about a notch this week. With Tua back, we thought that they were going to have bigger numbers, but Hill had 6 catches for 72 yards and Waddle had 4 catches for 45 yards. So let's just hope that the trend can continue and they can get more yards moving forward. But the running backs were the story in this game. A-Chain had 10 carries for 97 yards and 6 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. And Mostert had 9 carries for 19 yards and 2 touchdowns. So as a fantasy owner of Hill, I'm not too sure if I want him to do well next week because they are playing the Bills, but maybe we can hold them to about 15 points and still get the win. Moving on to the Eagles and Bengals. This was a pretty good game all the way up until the 3rd quarter, and then the Eagles just pulled away. But Jalen Hurts had a massive day. 236 yards passing, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and he ran the ball 10 times for 37 yards and had 3 tush-push touchdowns, which was bad news for me because my opponent had him and he ended up getting about 40 points. Saquon Barkley had a great game, 22 carries for 108 yards and a touchdown. And Devontae Smith, 6 catches for 85 yards and a touchdown. Also, A.J. Brown went 5 for 84. So just a good game overall from the Eagles. I did see that their defense stepped up, so that's a good sign for Eagles fans. As far as the Bengals go, Joe Burrow had an alright game, 234 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. I really thought that they looked good in the first half, but the Eagles defense really just clamped down in the second half and they weren't able to score very many points. As far as their running backs go, Chase Brown has definitely taken over the 1 spot over Zach Moss. He had 12 carries for 32 yards and 1 touchdown. But Mike Gesicki had a good game, 7 catches for 73 yards, and Jamar Chase, 9 for 54 with 1 touchdown. So we knew that these guys were going to get a little bit more targets with T. Higgins being out. But I think you got to start all of these guys moving forward. Moving on to the afternoon games, Bills and Seahawks. We killed it. Josh Allen had 283 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. He did have his first interception of the season, and he ran the ball 7 times for 25 yards. James Cook killed it. He ran the ball 17 times for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also caught the ball 3 times for 22 yards. So we know he's a must start every week as long as he's healthy. And as far as our receivers go, Shakir, another great game. 9 catches for 107 yards. Keon Coleman, 5 for 70 and a touchdown. And Dalton Kincaid had 4 catches for 31 yards and a touchdown. So with Amari Cooper being traded last week, this is what I was hoping our offense would be at the beginning of the season. But we started off good, and then we had a couple of bad games against Houston and Baltimore. And now it seems like things are back on track. Even though I know Amari Cooper only caught the ball 1 time for 3 yards, I just feel like his impact of being out there really helped our whole team. As far as the Seahawks go, not much to mention here. Geno Smith, 212 yards passing, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. And I can't believe I'm saying this, we held Kenneth Walker to only 12 yards on 9 carries. We did give up a cheap touchdown to Zach Charbonnet at the end of the game, but the only receiver worth mentioning is Jackson Smith-Njigba. He had 6 catches for 69 yards. Moving on to the Chiefs and Raiders, I really thought the Raiders had a chance to pull it out in the end. They did get that interception towards the goal line, but they just weren't able to get in. The Chiefs defense held them, and we know that the Raiders don't have a very good quarterback. Gardner Minshew, 209 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. He didn't throw any interceptions, so he had one of those games where he didn't necessarily lose the game for you, but he didn't win it either. And their run game was almost non-existent. Alexander Mattison had 14 carries for 15 yards. And their receivers, Brock Bowers still did pretty good, 5 catches for 58 yards. And Jacoby Myers, 6 catches for 52 yards and a touchdown. Moving on to the Saints and Chargers. The Chargers dominated this game. The Saints are still banged up. They brought in both of their backup quarterbacks, Rattler and Haener. They both didn't do very good. Kamara got 6 carries for 67 yards, and he also has 6 catches for 55 yards. So not a bad week for him, even though he didn't score. But Chris Olave had 8 catches for 107 yards, so I'm happy about that. And I just hope that that trend continues when Derek Carr comes back. As far as the Chargers go, Justin Herbert had a pretty good game, 279 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. J.K. Dobbins went 17 for 57 and a touchdown. He also had 4 catches for 11 yards, so not a bad day for J.K. Dobbins. But Ladd McConkey was the one who stole the show. He had 6 catches for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. So you got to keep an eye on this kid, and moving forward, he's probably worth starting. Moving on to Chicago and Washington. Crazy ending. We all saw what happened. Washington gets the Hail Mary at the end. But what really gets to me is when teams know that they're going to do a Hail Mary and they don't rush at least 4 to 5 guys. I don't know what the probabilities are, but I would rather take my chances on them lateraling the ball 10 times to score a touchdown versus giving them that opportunity to have a tip or 2 and get the Hail Mary. Speaking for myself personally, a few weeks ago we were playing the Jets and Aaron Rodgers got the Hail Mary on us right at halftime because we only rushed 3 guys. So I hate it. I don't know what these coaches are thinking, but I would always rush 4 to 5 guys in every Hail Mary situation. I didn't even think Chicago was going to be in that position. They just looked horrible all game. Caleb Williams only had 131 yards passing, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, but DeAndre Swift is the only one worth mentioning in this game. He had 18 carries for 129 yards and a touchdown, and obviously the receivers didn't do too well because Caleb didn't do well. Odunze, 3 for 41, Keenan Allen, 2 for 39, DJ Moore, 2 for 27. So coming off of their bye week, they look rusty, and I'm not too sure who to start moving forward on this team except for DeAndre Swift. And as far as Washington goes, Jaden Daniels, he looked good even with his injury. He went 326 yards, 1 touchdown, which was at the end, and 0 interceptions. So I'm just glad he's on my team. He's a must start every week, and he also had 52 yards rushing. So keep an eye on his injury. He should start again moving forward because I don't think there was any setbacks. And Terry McLaurin had another great game. 5 catches for 125 yards, and Brian Robinson went 16 for 65, and he also had 1 catch for 11 yards. So I would start all these guys. And also Zach Ertz had another good game, 7 catches for 77 yards. So I think all these guys are must starts. Moving on to the Panthers and Broncos. Bryce Young did start this game. He went 224 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And Chuba Hubbard took a step back this week. He had 15 carries for 56 yards and only 2 catches for 15 yards. So I would still start him every week, even if it's in your RB spot or your flex position. And as far as the receivers go, they all had mid games. David Moore, 4 for 39. Xavier Legette, 4 for 34. He did have one of the touchdowns. Miles Sanders, 7 for 38. And Jalen Coker had 4 for 78 and 1 touchdown. I'm not even sure where he came from. I think it was because Deontay Johnson didn't play in this game, but I would stay away from this whole team except for maybe Chuba Hubbard. As far as the Broncos go, Bo Nix is a must-add off the waiver wire if you don't already have him. He had 284 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and he even ran one in for a touchdown. So I'm going to try to get him this week off the waiver wire and see if I can potentially trade him to somebody who's in need of a quarterback, because I already have Jaden Daniels. Javonte Williams took a step back this week. He had 17 carries for 44 yards and 4 catches for 8 yards. But I still think he's a must start every week, as well as Courtland Sutton. He had 8 catches for 100 yards. And if you're in the need for a tight end, Troutman, 4 catches for 85 yards and a touchdown. I mean, they don't really have a clear-cut number 2 receiver, so Troutman might be worth an add this week. Moving on to the Sunday night game, Cowboys and Niners. The Niners dominated this game, but it looked like they gave up in the end and just gave away 2 cheap touchdowns to the Cowboys, led them back in the game, and they ended up getting the ball back with a chance to win the game in the end. But Niners luckily stepped up on defense and got the win in the end. But as far as the Cowboys go, Dak Prescott, 243 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions again. The Niners owned this guy. And also Zeke had 10 carries for 34 yards and a touchdown. Dalvin Cook came in, he didn't do nothing. And Dowdle was out with an illness. As far as the receivers go, CeeDee Lamb's the only one worth mentioning. He had 13 catches for 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. That really hurt me because my opponent had him and Jalen Hurts, who had 3 tush pushes, so that just sucks. As far as the Niners go, Brock Purdy did what he had to do. He didn't put up crazy numbers. 260 yards passing, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. But Isaac Guerrero stepped in nicely for Jordan Mason. 14 carries for 85 yards and a touchdown. He also had 3 catches for 17 yards. So if Mason's going to be out and McCaffrey's going to be out, he's definitely worth a must start. As far as the receivers go, George Kittle killed it. 6 catches for 128 yards and 1 touchdown. Debo had 4 for 71 and Pearsall 4 for 38. Honestly, I think Pearsall is worth a flex moving forward with Ayuk out, and Jawan Jennings may be coming back, but even if he does come back, Pearsall is still worth a flex in my opinion. Moving on to the Monday night game, Giants and Steelers. The Steelers did what they had to do. They got the win, but Daniel Jones just did not look good at all. 264 yards passing, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. He got sacked 4 times, and he didn't even run the ball this game. As far as the receivers go, Darius Slayton, 4 catches for 108 yards. Malik Neighbors, 7 for 71. But the story here for me is Tyrone Tracy. He had 20 carries for 145 yards and 1 touchdown. I just think he's definitely taken over that number 1 spot over Devin Singletary, and he's a must start every week. As far as the Steelers go, Russ is still doing pretty good. 278 yards passing, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. So he's still kind of getting into the groove of things. It's only his 2nd game back, but I don't think he's going to give up the starting job to Justin Fields anymore. And Najee Harris had a good game. 19 carries, 114 yards, 3 catches for 17 yards. We know he's a must start every week. And the receivers, Russell Wilson did a good job of spreading the ball around this game. George Pickens, 4 for 74. Van Jefferson, 4 for 62. Calvin Austin, 3 for 54 and a touchdown. So I don't know about this Austin kid, but he also got a punt return. And it's pretty much a battle between him and Van Jefferson on who's the number 2 on this team. So he might be worth a pickup off the waiver wire. That's going to be it for me this week. I still can't believe I scored 164 points and I lost. And it stings bad. I'm still in last place. I'm 2-6. We'll see how things go. I do like my team moving forward and think I can get a few more wins to sneak into the playoffs, and that's all I care about, because I don't care if I'm the last seed to get in. As long as you make it in, anything can happen. We all know that. So good luck to you guys this week, and go Bills.